Claire's dog had on a pair of safety goggles. That alone should have tipped me off that reality had finally jumped the rails. Monday, 10:14 a.m. lab floor. Claire strutted in like some runway Caesar, clutching her Instagram-famous French bulldog, Miso, as though he were a designer handbag instead of an itchy, wheezing fur ball. Miso wasn't just there, he was dressed up. Tiny lab coat. Faux badge reading Chief Marketing Officer. Claire lit up like this was Coachella instead of a restricted biohazard zone. Quick photo op everyone. Brand unity campaign, she sang, waving a pastel ring light like a magic wand. Miso wants you to woof for wellness. Isn't this fun? Fun wasn't the word I'd use. I was knee-deep in finalizing our compliance renewal checklist. A task that didn't exactly mix with glittery dog bows and squeaky toys scattered across sterile counters. Claire hovered at my shoulder, practically buzzing with influencer energy. Maya, come on. Get in the shot, she purred, already adjusting her phone tripod. Stand next to Miso and hold the speaker. He'll bark when it's time to smile. I turned slowly. Claire, this is a controlled lab. Pets aren't allowed in here, especially not loose ones. It's a violation of. She cut me off in a sing-song tone. You really don't get it, do you? This isn't just science anymore. It's a lifestyle. A brand. And if you're not behind the brand, she shrugged, as if the thought pained her, well, you don't get the hours. She said it with a laugh, like a joke. Like HR wouldn't spontaneously combust if they overheard. But the next morning, my schedule quietly shifted, from 32 hours to 28. Not enough for benefits. Just enough to remind me where I stood. And HR? Silent. No explanation. No paperwork. Just a cold auto email. Schedule adjustment notice. Later, Claire strolled by my desk, sipping an iced matcha that reeked of regret and peppermint gum. No hard feelings, Maya. It's just a vibes thing, you know. She chirped it like she hadn't just slashed my paycheck with a smile. Now pause. Before we go further, if you're enjoying this spiral into corporate chaos, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, 90% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed. Every click keeps this channel alive and fuels our rebellion against HR-approved insanity. Now back to the disaster. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't storm into her office with a speech about loyalty or ethics, or whatever Hallmark garbage Claire expected. Instead, I opened my calendar. Scrolled ahead. Because I knew something she didn't. Every year, right about now, a little ticking time bomb sits inside our systems. The renewal form that determines whether our lab is legally allowed to function. Not optional. Not a suggestion. A federally tracked, heavily regulated requirement. That form demands 3 things. Updated certifications, full documentation, and the digital signature of a compliance officer working a minimum of 30 hours a week. Guess who'd been the only authorized signatory for the past 4 years? Guess who was now down to 28 hours? Guess what Claire had just blown up with her vibes? I didn't say a word. Just logged into the compliance dashboard, updated my hours, and flagged the renewal as incomplete. No fireworks. No dramatic warnings. Just a quiet note marked pending authorization. The system, per protocol, escalated straight to legal. I printed the page, signed, dated, and locked it away in my desk drawer with a satisfied breath. Claire could parade her dog in lab coats all she wanted. But she'd just yanked the pin on a grenade bigger than she could imagine. When the fallout hit, I'd be exactly where I was now, calm, collected, spotless. And Claire? She'd be standing there with a bulldog in a costume, wondering why no one could access the reactor room. Countdown initiated. The very next morning, the compliance server lights flickered. Nothing ominous, just a brief hum. The kind of glitch no one notices unless you're the one watching everything. That someone was me. I sat at my desk, sipping the usual burnt corporate coffee in its recycled cardboard-smelling cup. My screen pulsed with the same alert it had shown all week. Annual operational license renewal incomplete. 3 checkboxes. 2 were green. 1, authorized signatory verification, was red, blinking slow, like a fading heartbeat. I clicked it. Read the clause again. Must be reviewed and digitally signed by an approved compliance officer working no fewer than 30 hours a week at the time of signature. 30. Not 28. That's what Claire gave me. And here's the irony. Even if I wanted to, I legally couldn't sign anymore. My reduced hours had stripped me of eligibility, which meant, by sheer arrogance or plain stupidity, Claire had just left our lab running on an expired license, a balloon with a slow leak. I flagged the task in the compliance system as blocked. Insufficient clearance. Timestamp added. HR notice linked. The system functioned exactly as designed. An automated alert fired off to legal, HR, and the executive board. A subject line that vanished into inboxes. A warning destined to be ignored. Claire ignored it too. She saw the flagged item during our weekly brand culture sync. Yes, she really used that phrase now. One flick of her perfectly polished hand, and it was dismissed. Just a small glitch, she said. Sitting there in a sweatshirt bedazzled with Slay compliant. Tech will sort it. Maya, let's keep things brand positive. Fine. Brand positive it is. I didn't push back. Instead, I printed the dashboard error report. 74 lines, all auto-generated, undeniable. I signed at the bottom, stamped the date, and tucked it in my drawer beside a backup USB and a stress ball shaped like DNA. People think revenge looks cinematic. A dramatic showdown, a slap, a storming exit. In reality, it's quieter. It's a log file. A folder. A pause at the right moment. I switched off auto-renew on the license form. Not sabotage, just compliance. If someone isn't authorized, automation halts until new approval arrives. Rule 84, Compliance Handbook. Claire had never opened it. Most of them hadn't. Some HR intern probably clicked acknowledge on the alert without reading it, assuming it was another duplicate. Claire glanced at the red badge on my task list and tossed off, just be sure it's wrapped before next month's audit. That's the trouble with deadlines, some whisper instead of roar. And if you're too busy staging your dog for Instagram, you don't hear the clock ticking. Meanwhile, my compliance dashboard, my pride, my creation, wasn't failing, but it was fragile. Not critical, not urgent, just brittle. An overdue chemical log here. An expired vendor license there. Death by 1,000 overlooked checkboxes. The kind of decay only someone like me would notice. Someone like me, who once cared. But I didn't care anymore. I was logging, not fixing. Watching, not patching. Letting the system testify on its own. And it did, quiet, steady. Claire, meanwhile, posed with miso on a yoga mat in the break room. She called it corporate self-care. Marketing uploaded it with a caption. Balance is compliance. I nearly laughed. Balance, sure. But the scales were tilting. And no one noticed the person holding them had already stepped back. They called it a culture alignment review. Reality? A staged ambush in a conference room still reeking of catered leftovers from the last earnings call. Claire convinced the People Ops team, once HR, now rebranded Human Vibe Architects, yes seriously, that our department needed realignment, not performance evaluation. In her email, just a vibes check-in/growth dialogue. Corporate granola language that tastes like a pink slip. There were donuts, of course. Always donuts when something ugly is coming. I sat at the end of the table beside the old printer wheezing like it knew what was about to happen. Claire stood at the screen, arms folded, miso strapped to her chest in a branded baby sling. Tiny marsupial of menace. The slides began. Pastel mood board. Authenticity is our currency. Synergy over silos. Next, a pie chart. Brand engagement differential. With one red slice labeled compliance. Claire's voice sang sweet. We've noticed a gap between compliance practices and our evolving brand story. This isn't punishment, just exploration. Then came the anecdote slide. A blurry screenshot of me, caught mid-stride on a security cam. Caption, misbrand moment, lack of engagement during mascot morale initiative. The mascot being her dog. The initiative being a photo shoot. I kept my face still. The others fidgeted. Marcus, our lead, studied the floor like it might open and rescue him. Claire clicked again. We don't want to single anyone out, she said, after literally singling me out. But some appeared disengaged, resistant, maybe misaligned with our future direction. I sipped my coffee. Cold now. Bitter. Like me. When she finally stopped to breathe, Weighed down by her own self-applause, I looked up. Voice even, steady as a metronome. Can I get that in writing? Silence. The projector fan shifted pitch. Claire smiled, that forced smile of someone who stepped in gum, but insists it's intentional. Oh sweetie, no. This is fluid. It's a dialogue. Very nonlinear. Agile. She tossed around tech jargon like confetti at a sad parade. I nodded once. Understood. 10 minutes later, I was back at my desk. I opened a blank document. Summary of Culture Alignment Session, 10 a.m. Room 3B. Listed attendees. Noted exact words, slide captions. Recorded the phrase misaligned with our future direction beneath the photo of my face under disengaged. No emotion. No commentary. Just the facts. Because facts outlast feelings, especially in court. I emailed it to myself, encrypted account, subject line, noted. Half a minute later, my phone buzzed. Elise, my friend in legal. 2 lines. Heard about the ambush. You okay? Want me to review your employment clause? I didn't answer. Just stared at the screen, heat rising under my skin like a kettle waiting for someone, anyone, to hear it scream. Across the office, Claire burst into loud laughter at something Miso had done. His paw rested on a stapler as if that alone was peak corporate humor. I turned back to my computer, pulled up my employment contract from the company intranet, downloaded the PDF, and tucked it into a new folder I labeled insurance. I wasn't just keeping records anymore, I was preparing. And Claire was about to find out what happens when a compliance officer stops shielding you and starts shielding herself. The truth about vanishing isn't slamming the door shut. It's leaving it cracked just enough that no one realizes you've slipped away. So, I began arriving at 9 a.m. sharp and leaving exactly at 5 p.m. Not a minute early, not a second late. If a server went offbeat at 5:01, it could wait. If a compliance inconsistency popped up at 6:45, it was ticket material. If Claire wanted to brainstorm about mixing wellness initiatives with lab safety protocols at 7:30 on a Thursday, I was already home in pajamas, eating pad thai and watching crime shows. I used to be the quiet fixer. The one who smoothed over broken spreadsheets at 10 p.m., who drafted 3 versions of every report. One for legal, one for the board, one for anyone who didn't understand the acronyms. That person was gone. Now, I stuck to my job description, nothing more, nothing less, and the system began to shift gradually like water heating beneath a frog. Tiny cracks appeared. An overdue equipment calibration. A vendor certificate that expired a day ago. A chemical disposal log left open. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make bureaucracy frown. The irony? Everything was visible, documented, untouched by sabotage. Just the unvarnished truth left to float to the surface. I switched off auto-renewal on the license renewal form. Policy said partial employment hours invalidated signatory authority, so my name grayed out in the system. A small lock icon appeared next to primary compliance officer. By the book. Above board. The dashboard shifted from yellow to orange, not red. Not yet. Claire never noticed. She was too wrapped up in her new obsession. The Miso Lab apparel line. Branded hoodies, dog-themed lab coats, company logo leashes, and water bottles with fetch compliance, written in cursive that made my left eye twitch. She pitched it to marketing while I sipped cold brew through a DNA-shaped straw. It's not just clothes, she declared. It's a statement. Science can be cute too. Miso yawned. I copied him. She even threw a launch party in the break room. Balloons, branded kibble, the works. I sat at my desk, quietly finishing the weekly compliance report. Normally, I'd add a summary, highlight rising risks, flag renewals. This time, I simply click save and close the tab. They say silence means consent. I say silence is a warning. A quiet log. A muted dashboard. A missing signature. All legal. All traceable. Later, a tech pinged me on Slack. Hey Maya, chem log from room C21 didn't update last week. System glitch, I typed back. Then no glitch. Protocol expired 3 days ago. Check with LabOps. A minute later. But you usually fix those. I didn't answer. Because I didn't anymore. That's the thing about pulling back. It doesn't scream. It doesn't throw a tantrum or declare I quit. It simply retreats. It withdraws the late nights, the quiet rescues, the invisible patches. It lets the cracks widen naturally. And when people finally see the floor full of holes beneath them, they never remember who used to seal them. Especially when they're busy fitting a French bulldog into a size small lab coat. The deadline was written in bold on every compliance calendar in the building. September 1st, 8 a.m. But like most bolded warnings in corporate life, it became decorative, something to nod at in meetings, then ignore. Like mandatory training, or don't microwave fish. For me though it was gospel. I watched that date creep closer every time I logged in. Like a clock tower shadow moving over a silent town square. 2 weeks left. Tick, tick, tick. I began preparing, not with secrecy, but with precision. I downloaded every system alert, every timestamp, every automated notice. I tagged each one with the recipient's name, time opened, and whether it was acknowledged, ignored, or left unread. Dozens of them. Then I drafted a formal memo. Subject: Authorized Compliance Signature Revocation. Operational License Renewal FY25. In detached legal wording, I explained I no longer met the minimum hours required to sign renewals. I cited the policy, referenced HR updates, attached my pay stub. Then I filed it. The system fired an automatic alert to HR legal and the executive team. The email read, "Please be advised. Compliance Officer Mira Thomas is no longer authorized to execute the annual license renewal due to reduced employment hours per HR Adjustment Number 1837. No one responded. Not HR. Not legal. Not CLA. One person marked it as read. Nothing more. I didn't follow up. I wasn't required to. I no longer had the authority, and I'd made that clear. Instead, I built a folder on my encrypted drive, labeled TikTok. Inside, PDFs, internal emails, system screenshots, a clean paper trail of their neglect. No opinions, no speculation. Just records. Because when the storm hits, people forget. They forget who warned them, who tried, who kept the wheels turning without applause. I wasn't covering for them anymore. Claire, meanwhile, was buried in Phase 3 of her Miso merch rollout. This time, branded dog bowls for employee appreciation gifts. She pitched it during an executive sync as hydration mindfulness meets pet-friendly branding. The CFO blinked twice, mumbled something about budget. Claire patted his arm. Let's be innovators, not inhibitors. Meanwhile, the lab kept running, illegally. Techs ran assays. Researchers processed compounds. Chemicals logged. Samples chilled, shipped, restocked. All under the assumption our license had been renewed. It hadn't. Not because I failed. Because I stopped giving them what they never valued. Quiet protection. Silent coverage. The invisible scaffolding beneath their glitter and hashtags. My hours stayed capped at 28. No reinstatement. No conversation. No acknowledgement. Claire had gotten exactly what she wanted. A compliance officer who didn't make waves. And that's what I gave her. One who followed every rule exactly, and nothing beyond. In my personal notes, I added one last line. September 1st, 8:01 a.m. auto expiry trigger. System locks unless renewal verified. Then I closed my laptop, clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp, and bought myself a milkshake. Not to celebrate, but because anticipation tastes sweeter when you already know the ending. And you're the only one who read the script. Monday, 9:03 a.m. The elevator chimed like any other day. No drama. No fireworks. Just the sterile ding of doom disguised as routine. I didn't look up. Was halfway through a Q3 audit spreadsheet when I heard it. Not the inspector. Claire. What do you mean we're not licensed? Her voice didn't travel. It exploded. Like someone had just told her Miso merged with a rival brand. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the bitterness steady me. Across the office, heads popped up like prairie dogs sensing danger. The whole floor froze, pretending not to listen, while absolutely listening. From my chair, I saw the hallway clear as day. A man in a navy blazer, posture sharp, flipping through a thick black binder. ID clipped to his shirt. Embossed seal. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Laboratory Oversight Division. The kind of badge that makes people forget how to breathe. Claire rushed him. All manicured fury wrapped in forced sparkle. There must be some mistake, she fake laughed. We've never had issues. I'm the VP. Maybe we handle this over coffee. The inspector didn't flinch. He held up a single sheet. According to your most recent filings, your operational license expired today at 8 a.m. Your compliance signatory is listed as Mir A. Thomas. Payroll confirms she's part-time, therefore unauthorized. That makes this facility non-compliant under federal regulations. Effective immediately, this lab is suspended. Claire blinked. But we've been running experiments all morning. He nodded. And you've been operating illegally for 1 hour and 3 minutes. He pulled a red security seal from his case, pressed it onto the biometric panel. The door clicked, locked, blinking red. Access revoked. Federal hold. I didn't move. Didn't smirk. Just saved my spreadsheet and minimized the window. 3 engineers staggered from the hallway, faces pale. One holding a box of reagents. Another balancing a tray of samples mid-transfer. Claire's face was a battlefield of outrage and disbelief. You can't just shut us down. The inspector stayed calm. Ma'am, your license is inactive. Your lab contains federally regulated substances. That makes this both a liability issue and a compliance breach. You'll receive official notice within the hour. I suggest you notify your COO. She spun so fast her hair slapped into her lip gloss. Maya, she snapped. Can you explain what's happening? I looked up, blinked with rehearsed serenity. You'll want to check your inbox. The memo went out 2 weeks ago. She stormed toward me, heels cracking the floor like gunshots. Why didn't you tell me this was serious? I did, I said, sipping my coffee. The system did. Legal did. You acknowledged it, eyes flicking across the screen. Around us, the crowd was growing, silent, wide-eyed, hungry for answers. The kind of sluggish office swarm that can smell blood in the water, yet waits for someone else to name it first. Behind Claire, the inspector was snapping photos of the locked lab doors, his phone clicking like a metronome of impending fallout. Someone near me whispered, Is that a federal lockout? Yes, I replied without turning. It is. At 9:14 a.m., the thunderclap hit. A company-wide Slack alert. Urgent. All laboratory operations are suspended. Await further instruction from legal and compliance. And then came the other sound. Not sirens but fiscal panic. From the far hall, the CFO's voice erupted, sharp and furious. Do you have any idea what it costs for every day that lab is shut down? 1 million. 1 million a day. Claire's hand slid from her hip as if weighed down by stone. She glanced back at me, her anger dissolving into something closer to dread. I nodded once. Tick-tock. I opened a new browser tab, labeling it License Reinstatement Procedure Draft. But I didn't start typing. I was waiting for a call. By 10:02 a.m., the first emergency meeting assembled. The boardroom reeked of hot toner and cold anxiety. Executives stumbled in, eyes bloodshot from endless Slack pings. Legal arrived dragging briefcases like body bags. IT fumbled with a stubborn projector that refused to cooperate. The CFO already looked a decade older. The COO kept mumbling, 1 million a day, as if reciting a prayer for the doomed. Claire, still in her blush-pink dog mom hoodie embroidered with Miso Lab Elite in gold, scrolled frantically through her phone as though she could swipe the disaster away. It's obviously a system glitch, she insisted. The dashboard must have flagged it wrong. Mia usually catches this stuff. That comment drew a few side eyes. Not from me. I wasn't even in the room. But I knew what was happening. I'd seen the calendar invite bounce between legal and the C-suite, marked with a single word, urgent. Later, Elise filled me in. The meeting began with Claire's usual deflection. The renewal probably didn't sync. We can backdate a correction. This doesn't need to blow up. The general counsel didn't speak at first. He sat flipping through a printed packet of our operating license like scripture, his fingers stopping at Section 6, Paragraph 3. License must be renewed annually by an authorized compliance officer employed no fewer than 30 hours weekly. Documentation must confirm eligibility at time of signature. Finally, he looked up, his brows drawing together. Wait. Mia is still listed as the signatory, correct? Claire blinked. Well, yeah. She always is. That's her job. Is it? He asked flatly, turning to HR. Pull her time card. The HR rep, a sweating man clutching a pristine notepad he hadn't touched, typed into his laptop. His eyes darted across the screen, then froze. His face drained. Last month she dropped to 28 hours, he said softly. Effective immediately. Adjustment number 1837. Initiated by Claire. The silence that followed felt vacuum-sealed, pressing against the walls. Claire's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, like she was trying to reboot her alibi system. But she's still here, she's been working. What's 2 hours? A rounding error. The general counsel pinched the bridge of his nose as though someone had handed him a grenade labeled oops. You didn't just cut her hours, he said slowly. You disqualified her. Under federal standards, part-time compliance officers cannot sign renewals. Claire's mind churned in real time. Dangerous for someone who once confused ISO certification with her iPhone's brightness settings. But it's Mia, she repeated, as if saying my name could conjure a reset button. He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on the incomplete license stamp, burned red into our compliance logs. Then, almost whispering, he ordered, "Get her on the phone. Now. No yelling. No theatrics. Just the kind of cold directive that rewrites careers." HR scrambled. Legal opened laptops like field medics in a triage zone. Claire stared at the table, blinking like a machine that had just lost power. But I didn't answer. My phone lit up. Unknown EXT priority, and I placed it face down on the desk. Instead, I opened my email. 3 new subject lines. From General Counsel, please respond, critical. From COO, we need to talk. From Claire, can we reset? Followed by a smiling eyes emoji. I closed them all without reading. Then I forwarded one line to Elise and legal. She read it and sent back a single emoji, grimacing face. I returned to my spreadsheet, scrolling down to the last log entry under the file I'd named TikTok. Line 74. System failure caused by executive decision, not system error. Saved. Backed up. Let them call. Let them panic. I'd warned them. Time was up. At Hopper and Bean, the soft hiss of the espresso machine and the clink of ceramic cups provided the soundtrack to an empire unraveling. 3 blocks from HQ. I sat by the window, far enough to avoid run-ins, close enough to hear the digital screams through Slack. Elise sat across from me, laptop open, screen full of paragraphs sharp as legal landmines. At the top, employment reinstatement agreement, A. Thomas. She didn't ask how I wanted my coffee. She already knew. After all the late-night calls and Thai takeout confessions, she understood exactly what this morning required. A lavender oat milk latte sat in front of me, my chair angled toward the street. I wanted the best view of the mess outside, without ever being touched by it. At 10:31 a.m., my phone lit up again. 6th call. Same unknown number. Same urgent label. I let it ring out. Elise peered at me over her mug, one brow raised. You planning on answering at some point? I stirred my drink slowly, smiling. Nope. Voicemail's full anyway. By design. Like ripping the batteries out of a doorbell. She clicked her trackpad. Good. I just spoke with their general counsel's paralegal. He sounded like someone who just discovered the fire extinguisher was only for show. Another buzz. This time a text from counsel himself. Please. Just talk to us. Name your terms. Elise leaned over my shoulder. Oof. Straight from denial to bargaining. Classic stage 2 panic. I typed one sentence. No warmth. No apologies. Kindly route all requests through my contract attorney. Smiley face emoji. Send. Elise nearly choked on her latte. You had to add the emoji? Had to. It's part of the new brand guidelines. The cafe's soft jazz carried on. Somewhere in the back, a tray clattered to the floor. Probably symbolic. Elise opened the final reinstatement agreement. You're certain about going back? I don't want to, I admitted, eyes fixed on the bold clauses mid-page, but I will. On my terms. With protections. and with enough back pay to personally fund Claire's nervous breakdown. We reviewed the terms again. Guaranteed 40-hour minimum. VP title with direct board access. Full retroactive pay since the hour cut. Authority to appoint an independent compliance team. Non-interference clause tied directly to CLA. Annual renewal bonuses tied to policy shifts. Elise had even slipped in extras. Whistleblower retaliation protection, and rights to pre-cleared media contact. We both knew why. Insurance, for when someone tried to get clever later. Another buzz. This time it was Claire. Hey, can we talk? Just us girls. Think we got off on the wrong paw prince winking face. Elise laughed so hard she nearly spilled her latte. I replied with one character. That. No context. No emotion. She wouldn't understand, but it wasn't meant for her. At 11:05 a.m., Elise hit send, CCing legal, HR, and the COO. Subject line, reinstatement agreement. Execution required prior to license activation. From the corner of the cafe, I watched the city carry on. Cars rushing by, people laughing, phones buzzing with emergencies that weren't mine. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing. And this time, they were the ones waiting on me. The boardroom was suffocatingly quiet, the kind of silence that killed words before they could be spoken. Claire sat slouched at the far end, a wilted version of her usual self. Her once perky ponytail drooped. Her hoodie, embroidered with miso lab, was wrinkled, stained with what looked like turmeric latte and bad decisions. She looked sleepless, restless, like she'd been frantically Googling how to undo federal shutdowns all weekend. The COO stood rigid at the table's end, arms folded, jaw locked. If looks alone could terminate someone, Claire would already be a footnote. I entered without theatrics, plain blazer, slacks, low heels. Hair tied back. No makeup. Didn't need it. The power wasn't in how I looked. It was in the paper I carried. A single printed sheet that outweighed 6 months of Claire's Instagram-driven brand strategy. I set it down in front of General Counsel. These are my terms. He didn't hesitate. Just uncapped his pen, like he'd been waiting centuries for this moment. Clause 1. 40 hours minimum, no exceptions. Clause 2. Vice President of Regulatory Integrity. Clause 3. Direct board reporting, bypassing executives. Clause 4. Authority to build and budget an independent compliance team. Clause 5. Full back pay plus discretionary bonus for damage control. Clause 6. Non-interference. No suspended exec touching compliance. Claire's head snapped up at the last one. Wait, suspended? I looked to the COO. Is she authorized to speak? No, he said flatly. She's suspended pending review. Claire's jaw dropped, her eyes pleading toward General Counsel. He didn't even glance up. I handed my old badge to HR. New one, please. This one's expired. He took it with trembling hands and nodded. Counsel reached the end of the agreement, signed and slid it back. Welcome back, VP Thomas. I gave a single nod, opened my laptop, and pulled up the compliance dashboard. A red alert blinked. License inactive. Renewal required. I clicked sign, authenticated with my new clearance, and watched the alert vanish. Dashboard glowing green. Clean. Legal. Compliant. The COO leaned in. How soon until operations resume? Already, I said. Inspectors were waiting. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Text from the field agent. Confirmation received. Padlock removed. Entry access restored. I turned the screen so everyone could see. Claire muttered, thank God. But Counsel, still reading, murmured, not for you. Downstairs, the padlock came off. Staff filed back into the lab. Lights flickered on. Machines spun back to life. Claire charged for the elevator, swiping her badge at the reader. Red light. Again. Red light. Her access was gone. The COO passed her without stopping. Security will help you clear out your desk. Claire's wide eyes landed on me. Maya. I didn't break stride. I walked past her, toward the lab. The real lab. Where the work spoke for itself, no slogans needed. Kind of like me. When I'm allowed to do my job. Thanks for sticking around, Legends of the Break Room. Hit subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old manager spill their coffee in fear.